Now on to our first speaker of the day. Shane Hastie is the Director of Agile Learning Programs at IC Agile and will be speaking to us today on the topic of the ethics of Agile coaching. Welcome, Shane. Thank you so much for coming today. Over to you.
Thank you for inviting me along and allowing me the opportunity to talk to a topic of deep passion. So, the ethics of Agile coaching. But I'm going to ask you to use another Menti poll. So go back to menti.com, and the code is different, 67931049, and just one or two words. What does the term ethical mean to you? There we get. Trustworthy, for common good, truthful, in the right standing, play by the rules, establish safety, morals, virtuous, honest, right, trustworthy, congruent. Oh, lovely. Core value, virtuous, authenticity. Some strong and important terms here. The big one in the middle, trustworthy and truthful, virtuous, trust. So I'll leave the poll open. You can carry on adding things to that. But in our conversation, and I will confess it's a bit more of a monologue than a conversation, but we will have the conversation part at the end. There are a few things I want to explore. We'll start with this a little bit about ethics. Then I want to talk about coaching, the ethics of coaching, and then I want to bring in Agile coaching as a discipline, and then go on to work that a number of us are doing under an Agile Alliance initiative around the ethics of Agile coaching. So here's a great definition, and this comes from the BBC, and I would encourage you, go and have a look. They've got a series of articles and videos and so forth that explores a lot of this ethics stuff. A system of moral principles, how people make decisions, lead their lives. Ethics is concerned with what is good for individuals and society. And it's also described as a moral philosophy. That's the sort of summary of the BBC series. But there's a lot of deep stuff inside there, different ethical frameworks, different ways of thinking and looking that are really worthwhile exploring and thinking about. On the other hand, if we take high-tech industry, there are, and these are just some fairly high-profile, reasonably recent, a few years back now, some of them, examples of unethical behavior that we've seen. And I do wonder, what drives this behavior? What causes it to happen? And there's some interesting things in there. The Volkswagen emissions scandal, for instance. I'm if you're not familiar with that, this was picked up in California, where there was code in the engine management system of Volkswagen vehicles that when an emissions monitor was attached to the device, to the engine, to the exhaust, it changed the profile of the engine so that the emissions that were being released, the carbon release and so forth, the not so great gases that came out of the exhaust, were below the threshold for California's air quality laws. Unfortunately, if you'd actually tried to run the vehicle and go anywhere at that profile, it wouldn't move. But it met the criteria. So basically, fraud on a corporate scale. An interesting thing about the Volkswagen emissions scandal, there were some very, very large fines and penalties, and only one person went to prison. The engineer who wrote the code. Not the manager who told them what to do, not the senior executive who said we should have this sort of capability. The engineer who wrote the code, because they perpetuated the societal harm. Now, was that fair?
How and why?
They were found to be the one most directly liable. Cambridge Analytica, lots of evidence there. The Australian banks, they did some, took advantage of a little bit of ambiguity in the law and stole multiple billions of dollars from their customers. Now, they will say it wasn't stolen. The courts said they did. Yeah. And every one of these organizations has corporate values up on the wall and statements about ethical behavior. I wonder. So I think, and this is a we've got a short time tonight, so a very shortened examination of some of the evidence. If in the longer version of this talk, I put people into breakout rooms and I asked you to come up with, okay, what are some things that you have seen? Because of course it would never happen like that here, would it? Maybe. But the next thing I'd like to talk about is coaching as a profession. So keep the ethics in the back of your mind, and now let's start to talk about coaching. The coaching is a partnering with clients in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal potential. This is from the International Coach Federation, the most recognized body for professional coaching in the world today. And they have drafted standards and guidelines and set up what coaching is. This is the professional coaching in typically a business and personal context. I'm not talking about sports coaching. Sports coaching also, though, does have codes of ethics. The ICF defines for coaches a set of what they call core competencies. These are the 11 things that to be a certified ICF coach, you have to prove that you can behave in this way. And interestingly, the very first one is meets ethical guidelines and professional standards. Now, when you become an ICF accredited coach, you actually have to take a printout and sign a code of ethical conduct that embodies the ethical guidelines of professional coaching. And part of your engagement with any client is one of the first things you give them is, here is a copy of my code of conduct, and here is where you can complain about me. If I'm doing anything in violation of this code, there is a disciplinary process, and I have put myself under that disciplinary body. Now, the worst the ICF can do is cancel your accreditation, which means you can no longer call yourself an ICF coach. And if you are looking for professional coaching, if the coach that you are engaging with does not have an ICF credential, be cautious. And certainly I would encourage you to explore what is their ethical standard that they are working to. And there's the other competencies that I'm not going to go into now, but I would encourage you, if you haven't come across the discipline of professional coaching and before now, really, please do explore it. There's a lot of value there. Now, Edward Yakovsky is the author of this quote, and the building here is an office block in Atlanta, Georgia, where Martin Luther King used to have an office. And this quote can be really uncomfortable. You are personally responsible for becoming more ethical than the society you grew up in. How do we take that as a challenge? If we think of the Sustainable Manifesto, where does ethics sit? And to be a sustainable environment, to be a sustainable profession, for agility to be sustainable, my firm belief is that we do need to bring ethical frameworks, ethical guidelines, and this concept of becoming more ethical than the society we grew up in, so that it becomes a virtuous, additive cycle. And we see ethics as a core part of agility. And certainly for Agile and Agile coaching, which I'm going to make this link shortly. So here's a beautiful statement from the ICF, and I'm going to do some things that we should never do on presentations. We're going to read the slide out because these words are so meaningful. The challenge of working ethically means that members will inevitably encounter situations that require responses to unexpected issues, resolution of dilemmas, and solutions to problems. This code of ethics is intended to assist those persons subject to the code by directing them to the variety of ethical factors that may need to be taken into consideration, and helping to identify alternative ways of approaching ethical behavior. There's dilemmas constantly. ICF professionals who accept the code of ethics strive to be ethical, even when doing so involves making difficult decisions or acting courageously. And this is something that I want to call our attention to, particularly as we start to think about the discipline of Agile coaching. Now, a number of us, it started with Craig Smith and myself. Well, no, it didn't. It started in probably 2006, 2008 with work by people like Dan Mezek, challenging the lack of ethical frameworks. But it's about 3 years ago, Craig and I were sitting down at an Agile conference, one of the Agile North America, Agile 20XX conferences. And we're both been engaged with the ICF. We're both working towards ICF credentialing at the moment. And we've also been deeply involved and engaged in the Agile coaching community. And we were talking about this ethical framework of the ICF. And one of the key elements of the ICF, the International Coach Federation, is they bring, the coach there brings an absolutely neutral stance to the coaching relationship. The fundamental underlying philosophy of ICF coaching is that people are naturally creative, resourceful, and whole, and that the coachee has the ability to solve their own problem, and the coach is almost disengaged from what the solution is. This became, for us, when we were talking about the discipline of Agile coaching, a bit of a challenge, because Agile coaching brings with it a very deliberate bias towards agility. So we were thinking initially, why don't we encourage every Agile coach in the world to just become a member of the ICF? That way they can sign the code of ethics, and we've got a body that we can that will hold them to account. But then we really explored this deliberate bias towards agility. As an Agile coach, I do bring a deliberate and conscious perspective that while the coachee is creative, resourceful, and whole, I will generally want to bring an Agile approach to the resolution, to the solution for the organization. So acknowledging this deliberate bias meant we had to look elsewhere. And one of the things that we've looked to is, what is Agile coaching? And here is the great framework from the Agile Coaching Institute. Lisa Adkins, Michael Spade, and various others have released this as a Creative Commons artifact. And there's a lot on the Agile Coaching Institute website. There's a lot of good stuff. So the discipline of Agile coaching is fairly well defined. Organizations like IC Agile, and here I have to declare an interest, and I do need to update my CV, or my bio for the talk. I'm now the Director of Community Development rather than the Director of Learning Programs, but that's just a by the by. IC Agile, Scrum Alliance, various other bodies have done a lot of good work in defining what Agile coaching is as a practice. None of them have tackled what the ethics of Agile coaching should be up until now. So Craig and I got inspired. We spoke to other people. Now, we were at a conference. We were probably sharing some strong drink at the time, but we came out of it still inspired. Yes, this is something we believe that we can do something about. And because both of us were well versed in the work of the Agile Alliance, and we see the Agile Alliance as an independent body that sits across all of the Agile frameworks, they deliberately are certification, brand, and framework agnostic. The Alliance truly does hold the space for the Agile community. We felt that the Alliance would be a good place to put an initiative around, let's come up with a code of ethics for Agile coaching. And that way it wouldn't belong to one of the certification bodies. It could be open to all and inclusive. So again, I'd been on the board of the Alliance. Craig was currently on the board of the Alliance. We understood the mechanism of how the Agile Alliance gets member initiatives underway, which, by the way, if ever you've got a good idea in the Agile space and you feel that this is something that you could do with some help with, go and have a look at the Agile Alliance website and the concept of member initiatives. They're really powerful. It's a place to bring volunteers together and do work. So yeah, it is a voluntary thing. We ended up with a group of 32 or 33 people who worked mostly, it's been almost a year. We've been working away at defining. We started off by saying, okay, is there anything that's out there we could just borrow? So could we go to the ICF? Could we go to the Global Coaching Alliance? Could we go to various other organizations and just say, you know what, we'll tell every Agile coach to go and sign that. And we still found in every case, no, it doesn't quite fit. This deliberate bias towards agility is a very, very important element of the mindset of Agile coaching. So we took that and we said, all right, if we can't just, our work is done by pointing to over there, what do we need to do? And as a group, we investigated. We looked at various industries, from, of course, the ICF, the International Institute of Facilitators, but we also went to the education industry, to school teaching, to university teaching. We went to the medical profession. One of the people on the team was a licensed therapist, and he brought his perspective. One of the ladies on the team teaches ethics to 7-year-olds in a primary school. Man, can she teach us some things? It was wonderful when Sarah had, brought forward for us. This is the conversations we have with the 7-year-olds. These are conversations that I don't see many Agile teams having, never mind Agile coaches. And we ended up writing a draft at this stage, Code of Ethical Conduct. And we've been inspired by all of these different approaches, by all of these different things. And one of the first things that we looked at is, okay, what does ethical mean in here? What is something that we could bring in to this conversation about ethical behavior? So these are preambles from the code. A topic needs to be something that someone can do as soon as they sign up to the code. It doesn't need lots of extra education. It's, oh yes, this makes sense. I can read it, I can apply it. It also must be something where there's broad agreement that if I don't do this, it risks causing harm to myself, the professions, or others. And it must be applicable to coaching, not just coaches. It's not about the job title. It's the practice of coaching that is so important. And then we came up with a set of statements. And this is a draft. It has been released deliberately for public feedback. I'm going to, at the end and in the PDF of these slides, which you've already got, there is the link to the ethics initiative. We want feedback. But the topics, the areas that we cover, confidentiality and information security, just don't share information unless you have the coachee's permission, whether that coachee is an individual or a team. So this means I won't indulge in the conversation with the team's manager about, oh, tell me what happened in that retrospective, and who's doing best on that team. That's none of your business. I'm sorry. By my code of ethics, I will not disclose it without the team's agreement. Acting within your ability, I will be open and transparent about my skills and experience, and I won't claim to have a knowledge or abilities that I do not have. How many coaches are the night before the session reading the book and saying, okay, we'll do it this way, let's see. Now, if I have made a full disclosure to the team and say, I've never done this before, I'm going to read the book, and are you okay with me leading you? I will be one step ahead of you on this journey. That's a different thing. That's the openness and the transparency we expect. But all too often, and I'm afraid at this one, I do point very often to the paid external consultant coach. I can lead your DevOps implementation. I'm sure I can. What's DevOps? I'll be honest with the client if I believe they need another form of professional help, if coaching isn't the right thing. Introspection, continuing professional development. I will engage with a peer group. I will examine myself. I will have a mentor. Under the ICF and many of the other disciplines and professional bodies, there is, it goes deeper than this. It goes stronger. It goes to supervision. I will put myself under supervision of a more experienced practitioner. Well, we wanted to go there, but felt we don't have the framework for that yet. But is this something that we believe Agile coaches should be doing? Absolutely. I will seek to improve my self-awareness and effectiveness through professional development. As an Agile coach, I will consciously look to improve myself because I know I'm not there yet. I will be transparent about any potential conflict of interest. I will withdraw from the relationship if a conflict of interest cannot be adequately managed. This is the acting courageously, even when it could be painful. Social responsibility. I will seek opportunities to bring different voices to the conversation. I won't condone, allow, or perpetuate discrimination in any form. By my action and inaction, I will strive to leave society better than I found it. I will ensure the relationship remains valuable, and I won't extend it unnecessarily. This is another challenge if you're an external coach. You know, oh yeah, this team's doing okay. Yeah, where's another place here that I can mix in? Because, oh, this contract is, the value has disappeared. I will be honest about any perception of declining value and communicate that. I will ensure we have an agreed scope. I will work with the client to understand their needs rather than impose my own solution. You know, here is a framework. I love it. Of course you're going to use it. No. What's right for the client? I will not collude with an organization that is pursuing purposes that's at odds with the Agile Manifesto's values and principles. I will not abuse my power to influence others for personal gain. I will uphold the reputation of the coaching profession. I won't condone and will challenge unethical behavior in other Agile coaches. And I will attribute others' ideas appropriately and avoid the appearance they are mine. How many times do we see a coach using a new retrospective technique without acknowledging, oh yeah, I saw Amal do that yesterday. So those, folks, are the 18 statements that we've released at this stage. We've also got a set of what we called ethics stories that are discussion points, examples, because every one of these 18 is there because in the group of 32 people who put this together, we have seen these principles violated at least once, every one of them. So that's it. I am going to ask you, and I'll go to the Menti poll and move to the next slide in that. But not necessarily now, but think about it. What's missing? Please take some time, think about it, fill in that poll with what is missing. And I'd encourage you to go and have a look at the Agile Alliance initiative. And here is there's the website. And from there, you can download the code of ethical conduct. You can download the scenarios. So the code is a PDF, the scenarios. These are stories, examples of good and bad behavior. And there is an email address to send us feedback. So that's me. I'd love to open this up for conversation. And with only 11 people, we don't need to use chat. Let's just talk. Turn on your microphone, turn on your camera. Let's talk.
Absolutely. I think we have one question, right? Is unethical conduct considered to be an issue in the agile coaching community today? And what are some of the examples?
Well, every one of those ethical statements we have seen violated. And if I can take just one, and this is something that Dan Mezek has been writing about for over 10 years. The imposition of Agile versus the invitation to Agile. We will adopt XYZ branded framework. We will come into your organization and tell you that tomorrow you're in squads and tribes and squads, and you will completely reconfigure things. There's no invitation; it is an imposition. Was it? I can't remember who it was railed against the agile industrial complex. So that's just one example. And the conflict of interest situation, the extending the relationship, because I'm an external contractor, I'm getting paid well, this team has done okay, they don't really need me, what can we do next? On the other hand, if the team is genuinely saying, hey, here is something more we need, and with the organization we can negotiate that as the scope of work, fine. But the subtle in creating that ongoing dependency upon the coach, these are things that, yes, we have seen.
Are we saying then, Shane, that agile coaching is totally different and there's another position that we can call as agile consultant? Because at a certain point, clients don't know what they want to do and they ask for advice.
Mm-hmm.
Is that?
I want to differentiate between the coach giving advice and the consultant telling you what to do.
Yeah.
As a coach, I'm presenting options. I'm saying, here are some things, let's do the experiment. As the consultant, I'm saying, we'll operate, we will adopt this framework, you'll do this, and we'll do that. It's the difference between the imposition and the invitation, in my mind, is that key aspect of it. The invitation to a conversation. Dan Mezek talks about open space agility as a powerful mechanism for organizational transformation, because the people in the organization are co-creating the way of working. Yes, as the coach, as the person with knowledge, I will be doing some training, I will be doing some mentoring, I will also be doing some facilitating. And I'll point them at things and say, okay, how's this? But it's how's this, it's not you must do this. It's that is in my mind, the key differentiator in relationship. Does that make sense, Nidhi?
Yeah, I'm not thinking, but yeah.
Good question. Shane?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, beg your pardon, Sandeep. Shane, just curious, from what I've read so far of the ethics guide, I'm yet to have a deep dive on this, but it's great to see it come out. And I agree, I've seen, when you've observed those behaviors, it makes sense to build some guidelines around it and a code of conduct. It's wonderful. I'm wondering, does it also cover ethics with respect to, we see a lot of companies being spun up with agile coaching capabilities. And what I've found in my experience is you go through the whole process of looking at the suitability and bringing them in, only to find that what's promised in terms of the capabilities is not in fact what they can deliver on. Does the guide cover that?
Yeah. The second point, I will be open and transparent about my skills and experience, and I won't claim to have abilities or knowledge that I do not have.
Yeah, so I guess I'm coming from a perspective of it speaks from the perspective of the individual.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously the individuals in that situation would
Mm.
need to adhere to that. But I guess my feedback would be it would be good to have that eye extend to, yeah, well, I guess the vendor is the eye as well, but it just got me thinking in that perspective that it's both the individual and the companies.
Yeah, and we'd love to see companies signing on to this. We, in terms of what's the scope that we can cope with, is this is the starting point is with individuals. Where can this go? I don't know. I've got a vision. I've got an aspiration that eventually we see everybody who goes on an agile coaching course under any brand signs this as part of the course that they do, that there is a public register of these are the people who have signed this, and that maybe even we get to the point where there is a disciplinary process that says there is a complaints, that very much what the ICF has got. There is a complaints process. There is a dispute body who will hear both sides of any dispute and can take action against people who violate it. We're not there by a long way, but that's where I hope.
Wonderful. Okay, Shane, I think we will loop back to some of these points in the later stage of today's session as well. So thank you so much for that insightful presentation. And I'm sure all of us are now looking up and going through that guide. So I guess a good thing would be if you can have a look through and understand the code of conduct and be prepared for that mentee feedback later on. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much. And thank you folks for listening.
Thank you so much, Shane.